What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm doing some stuff to the FC. Actually, I'm not doing very much to the FC. So what I ended up doing was getting some poly engine and transmission mounts. The FC, the mounts are very, very squishy. The engine shakes and vibrates and does all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'm not exactly sure how bad it is when I'm driving it. I just can see the shifter flopping around. So what I'm doing today, like I said, poly mounts is the best way to go. I don't want it to be super solid, so that's the reason I didn't go with 100% solid mounts. So these poly bushings will be a lot better than the factory rubber, and they will be a million times better than, 30-year-old factory rubber. So what I'm gonna do is jack the car all the way up, put it on some jack stands. We'll swap out the engine ones first, then do the transmission ones. I'm thinking it should go relatively quick, but as everybody knows, working on vehicles, there's always things to be expected that are unexpected. On the passenger side, you have to pull the whole engine bracket with the mount. So the turbo is kind of stuffed in there. If you have an aftermarket turbo, it might be a little bit easier, but getting that top bolt is pretty difficult. So the factory bushing, it looks pretty decent, but when I push it with my hand, it is very squishy. So I'm gonna clean this bracket up because you can tell that oil has just been saturating this thing over the years and just making it really gunky and grimy. So I did end up having to pull the oil pan off the FC. The reason being is because when I pulled the engine bracket off, it just started dripping all kinds. Actually, it was a constant stream of oil just coming out. So there is a gasket on here. I'm going to use RTV, but also on the inside of the pan, it looks relatively clean, but on the bottom, it has like this weird looking sludgy stuff. I'm not exactly sure if that's from before, and because the oil that was in it was very fuely and old and just really gross, but not exactly if it was from before, if it's from now. It kind of looks metallic-y, but really it's hard to say. So looking at the inside of the rotor housing from the oil pan side, it doesn't look to be very dirty. So maybe it just cleaned it all off. Everything looks extremely nice and clean and good to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to scrape, hold on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to scrape all of this. You can see all the old paper gasket off, get the pan and the mating surface clean, and then just RTV it. Took a little bit of time, but I got the RX7 oil pan all nice and cleaned up. As you can see, the paint on it has just deteriorated over time. There isn't much of it. There's a little tiny surface rust spot right there. So what I'm gonna do is go by the store, see if they have a magnetic drain plug, because I would like to add that to the oil pan, as well as get some paint. Then I could coat this thing with some nice gloss black paint, and it will just mitigate whatever rust is gonna start. It was pretty oily to begin with, so every spot that there is bare metal was technically covered in oil, and since there's oil there, it really wouldn't rust it because moisture isn't gonna get behind it. But now that it's clean, it's definitely gonna need some paint. So let's go grab some paint. Throw a fresh coat of gloss black paint on the oil pan. At first, I thought it might be metal particulates, maybe from the engine, maybe some of the bearing material, something like that. And I was just kind of curious what it might be, because I've never had this pan off and it is very hard to say what it is. So I did start thinking about what it might be. I went into maybe it's iron from the iron plates, this or that, maybe it's some bearing material from the engine sitting so long, etc. And then I kind of started to think back what I actually put in the engine when I changed the oil. So I have been using liquid moly for quite some time in all of my cars, and I've never actually removed an oil pan in one that I have used it in. So the issue being is that stuff on the bottom of the pan was one-time use. And as I said before, I don't know if the stuff on the bottom of the pan was or was not liquid moly. But thinking back to what I put in the engine and what I was about to put in the engine, what I may still put in the engine, I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to add liquid moly to it or not. But if you compare what it looks like to what was in the bottom of the oil pan, it's the exact same consistency, it's the exact same color. It's this cap's not coming off. We have liquid moly. So this stuff is supposed to make your engine last. It has the exact same consistency. So I had some neodyme magnets. I also added a neodyme magnet to the end of my drain plug, but I ran neodyme magnets through the stuff that was in the pan. There was nothing that stuck to the magnet. So obviously that's not the issue. But what my issue is if this liquid moly is creating that much of a deposit on the bottom of the oil pan with one use, what is it doing in my F350 that I've used it multiple oil changes, probably, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10 oil changes worth of liquid moly in it? How much of this stuff is on the bottom of my oil pan? It's very peculiar. There's almost no way to prove that the liquid moly is what's on the bottom of my oil pan unless I don't know how I could prove it. So I painted the oil pan so it's nice and fresh again. It doesn't look all rusty and it's not missing a bunch of stuff. We'll flip it over, and all I'm gonna do is we have some liquid moly. We're gonna pour it in the bottom of the oil pan, and it looks exactly the same. Exactly the same. So it's the exact same stuff. I'm 100% sure that this is a deposit on the oil pan that I was very, very concerned about. I don't know. I can't say I'm 100% sure, but it's just very concerning. So I used it one time in the FC. I've used it multiple times in my FD. I've used it in a lot of cars. But I don't know, if the liquid moly is building up to this extent with one use, what is it doing in my F350 that I've used it in multiple oil changes? And is there a point where so much of this liquid moly builds up on the bottom of the oil pan that it then in turn starts being consumed into the oil pickup, and whatever this stuff that actually settles is heavy enough to not be mixed with the oil that it actually, you know, goes back to your oil pump? And what's that going to do to the oil pump? What's it going to do to the bearings? What's it going to do to the oiling system, to the pistons, the rings, all that stuff? It's just very concerning to me that something that I've used for so long, I've never actually seen what it does inside the engine or the oil pan. I know with my Volvo, I've had this feeling that it saved it when it lost, when the filter came apart and there was no filtering for 3,000 miles when I drove it up to Minnesota, or like, I don't know, 1,500 to 2,000 miles when I drove it up to Minnesota. But I had no real substantial data to back that up, and I really don't have any data to back up that this stuff actually works. So what's concerning to me, like I've said, is the buildup on the bottom of the pan. What's going to happen? Is it just going to keep building up until my whole pan is full of liquid moly? I'm not sure. It's just the areas that it was in is probably areas that don't get much circulation, and it just kind of lingers. I'm not sure, but it's very concerning to me. So this is pretty much exactly what it looked like. It had a little bit of oil mixed in it. I bet if I poured oil in there, it looked exactly the same. So I'm gonna just kind of, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I might use this liquid moly in the FC, but at the same time, should I use it in the FC, then pull the pan in like 1,000 miles or something to see if there's still the same buildup in the pan? Because I know in 1,000 miles that if the engine runs 1,000 miles and it actually use that much bearing material that it would probably no longer be running. So it's very hard to prove, but I think I'm concerned about it. It's something I'm very concerned about. So let's get the oil pan back on the FC. The oil pan is now ready to go, painted, sensors in, all nice and cleaned up, ready to put RTV on it. Oil pan is back on the car, sealed up, ready to go. I have the passenger side engine mount, poly mount on. So we now have everything all buttoned up under the car. The new engine mounts are in, the poly engine mounts, the new cleaned up oil pan is on, and everything else is put back together. The FC is now ready to go. Engine, tranny mounts are now in, and I must say they have done a lot. Just before driving it, just pushing on the engine, it's very solid. I mean, it's not 100% solid like aluminum mounts would be, but it doesn't have that, you know, it was just literally shaking the whole time. So now the engine will be a little bit more firm in there. Poly engine mounts in the FC, they helped out tremendously. It's like driving a whole nother car. You can feel the engine. It doesn't feel like it's flopping around. When I start it up, it just cranks. It doesn't feel like, I don't know, it just feels really different. The shifter's there, the shifter's not flopping around. You know where it's gonna be. And man, I'm not exactly sure what happened with the FC. I was almost to the coffee shop to upload the video, and then it started acting really weird. And I really don't feel like I over boosted or anything. I just was cruising, and literally now it literally just dies every time I let off the gas. It's running really bad. I checked to see if there's any vacuum leaks. It didn't seem like any of the stuff was loose or missing any plugs or anything like that. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with it, but I'm driving it back to the shop. It's driving, it sounds fine, but instantly when you let off, it just instantly dies. It has fuel pressure, and I'm not exactly sure. Maybe a coil just died out. I'm not exactly sure, but I guess I'll have to figure it out. Hopefully it's nothing major. Almost back to the shop. I think I know what's going on. It doesn't feel like I have any power brakes, so maybe I just popped the hose off for the brake boosters. So, or maybe it cracked, who knows. Kind of see it down there. The line for the brake booster popped off, so I'm gonna pull the top mount really quick and reconnect it. Got the brake booster line back on, so hopefully I didn't mess anything up by driving this all the way back here. I'm gonna throw the top mount back on, start it up, and hopefully everything's okay. And then we'll take it back over to the coffee shop. Moment of truth, let's see if she idles. Oh no. And she doesn't want to idle. drive the FC down to the coffee shop. Hopefully it clears up. I'm not exactly sure why it still doesn't want to idle. I don't know, just popped the vacuum line off the brake booster, and I really didn't drive it hard over here. I just kind of putted it over here, and it wasn't very far. It's probably only like 3 miles, so hopefully it clears up. All right, so she started idling again, going over to the coffee shop. I think everything's all right. Just got the video uploaded for tomorrow. Now I'm gonna drive the FC back to the shop, head home. I need to edit another video for Tuesday. It's gonna be the FC video, and just kind of go from there. I need to find the title for the Magnum, get everything kind of lined up, but I'm really glad that this thing drives as good as it does now. The poly engine and tranny mounts just helped out tremendously, and I'm also glad that I didn't blow it up. I was really worried when that brake booster line popped off. I didn't know what happened. It literally just, I was coasting down a hill and it just died. So if you like these videos, make sure to click the subscribe button, thumbs up, comment below, and as always, see you guys tomorrow.